You've probably been told to never use a colour like opera pink in your watercolour painting. But what if that's not the whole story? Today we're talking about what they don't tell you about fugitive watercolour paints, and it just might change the way you choose your colours. Some of the most joyful watercolour pigments are in the pink and red family, but alas, often the ones that you love the best are the ones that are described as fugitive. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but you may just have had one of those fervent know-it-alls condemn your use of a colour like opera pink because of this particular characteristic. So just what is a fugitive watercolour? The term fugitive in this context really just describes a colour that's not light fast, i.e. it's not permanent. What that means is that over time, these colours can degrade when they're exposed to light. That might mean that your stunning pink watercolour flower painting that you've hung in a sunlit room might soon become a pale, wishy-washy pink flower painting, or even fade into an almost invisible flower painting. I know, it does sound dramatic. But remember, these things do take a long time. And sadly, no, I can't give you an exact number of months or years that it's going to take, because it does depend on the particular pigment, the way it's framed, where it's hanging or stored, and the amount of UV light that is reaching it during the day. Now, we did say that your typical fugitive watercolors tend to be in the pink and red family. So does that mean that all pinks and reds are fugitive? Fortunately not. The best way to figure out whether your favorite colors are in fact going to fade over time is to check the labels and packaging. It's usually printed right on the tube, and it's something that you probably want to have a look at when you're purchasing, if this is ending up being something that is going to be a concern for you. Each manufacturer usually has some sort of a system for indicating the degree to which a particular color might be fugitive. Sometimes they call it permanence, and sometimes they call it light fastness. Some of the paint colors actually indicate their light fastness in the paint color name. For example, permanent rose is, unsurprisingly, a light fast permanent color. Rose madder is another very similar color to permanent rose, and while its name doesn't obviously suggest that it's light fast, that one is too. And a paint that hints at being fluorescent or neon is typically going to be one of the fugitive ones. The best way to be sure is to check the classification symbols and ratings. As I say, all the important information you need to know is likely going to be printed on the side of the tube. You will need your reading glasses for those, though, most likely. It would be really nice if this was standard across all manufacturers, but much like brush sizes, which I talked about in another video, the sizes are not standardized across manufacturers, and nor are the classification symbols. So you probably will want to have a look at your particular manufacturer's classification chart. You can usually find these very easily on the manufacturer's website. Let me show you what I mean. This is the Daniel Smith website, but you'll find something similar for each of the manufacturers. Somewhere on the website, you're likely to find the color charts, and you can see all the beautiful colors that they have available, but they will also have additional information. You can see here there's information about granulation and information about the pigment characteristics. And here you see there's a whole column dedicated to light fastness, from fugitive to excellent. So you'll be able to see exactly where your favorite color sits. Now, if a color you've fallen in love with happens to have one of these low ratings, you may find a very similar alternative that is a less fugitive option. This is because the colors can be made with different combinations of pigments, and it means the manufacturer has carefully tried to choose pigments that will create a similar color but have more of the properties you might be looking for, like this permanence. So just like you can make macaroni cheese with delicious full-fat cheese or low-fat cheese, apparently, you can make pinks and reds with different kinds of pink and red pigments. If you get really into this technical stuff, you can actually usually find the specific pigments listed on the tube. It's typically in some sort of number code like PR83. So if colour mixing and understanding your pigments is awaking the inner chemist in you, you can go to town and investigate all your favourite paint colours and how they're made. But for me, it's a bridge too far. Which brings me to the next important question. Should a watercolour painter actually avoid fugitive colours? Here's the first secret that they don't actually tell you when they decry these pigments. The answer has almost nothing to do with the paint itself, and everything to do with this one simple question. What is your painting purpose? Are you planning to sell your artwork? Or are you working in a sketchbook that usually remains closed when it's stored? Are you planning to hang your painting somewhere bright and sunny? Or are you going to chuck it in a storage tub like I do? Of course, if you are intending to sell your painting, you can't in good conscience sell a painting made with fugitive paint because it's essentially a disappearing painting. If you're a professional painter, well, you probably skipped this video because you already knew the answer. But if you are a professional painter, it's obviously best to avoid these colours. Over time, you get to know the offending colours in your palette if you have any, and then you can avoid them when you're doing a special painting for sale. But most of us are not doing that, let's be honest. I don't know about you, but I paint for the joy of the painting, the fun of the splashing about the colour part, not for the finished product. I paint because it makes my heart so happy when my hands are busy and my eyes are feasting on the spectacular ribbons of colour streaming from my brush, pooling and mingling on that unctuous textured paper. So for me, it is an easy answer. I really don't care about how fugitive opera pink is, or that my favourite brilliant red violet is unrated. It's glorious. And the similar colours are indeed similar, but they're just not the same. And the benefit of enjoying that delightful colour on the page is just too great for me to miss out on. I'm totally okay with that, because I'm usually going to photograph the artwork, capturing some of that glorious colour, and I'm usually not selling it. And this is perhaps one of the most important points for modern painters. If you plan to scan your artwork or sell as prints or post online, the permanence of the original becomes almost totally irrelevant. The digital file won't fade. They never seem to mention that. As I say, I keep my finished paintings in a storage box most of the time. I also work in sketchbooks quite a lot, which means the fugitive colour will last well enough in there because those are never stored in the light. What do you do with your paintings? That will give you the answer to whether or not you should choose fugitive colours. On top of that, over the years, I've watched manufacturers gradually improve their formulas by adding pigments or substituting them to improve or increase the colourful life of the paint. Personally, I'm very happy to boldly choose the colours that speak to me in the art store, with only a passing nod to the lightfastness classification. You can actually conduct your own lightfastness test if you're that way inclined. If you have the patience, you can paint a little swatch of your colour on a sheet of watercolour paper and put it in a light spot, near a sunny windowsill, say. Take a photo of it now and then, perhaps every week or every month, so that you can compare it to the original and see if you can see any sort of fading. Or indeed, just completely forget about that and do some painting that you're going to enjoy. You decide. I do happen to have a painting that I had framed in just a regular, inexpensive frame and hung up on my wall. Not really in direct light, but I think it has probably faded over a few years. I do have a digital version from a photo that I took just after I painted the painting. So you can see for yourself if you think it has faded a lot. And this has been over quite a few years. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to judge with this sort of thing because once you take a photo, the camera can alter some of the colours. But it does give you a little bit of an indication of the sort of thing I'm talking about, and it's the sort of thing that you could repeat for yourself to see if there are any colours of concern in your paint box. But I'm sure you know my advice. Just get out your paint box and enjoy painting. Forget about those naysayers. Remember what it is that they don't tell you about these fugitive colours. They don't typically tell you that these rules of theirs only apply if you're planning to sell your original art or need to be able to display it for a long time. They don't typically tell you that for prints and sketchbooks, permanence really doesn't matter. And most importantly, they don't tell you that your joy and your creative experience are reason enough to choose any colour you love. Now you have the real scoop on those fugitive watercolours. And speaking of those art rules, I made a whole video about that. In that video, I was talking about the 5 most common art rules that I believe are really myths that you can completely ignore. I'll pop it up on the screen and you can watch that one next. Happy painting!